it going, everybody? Philly Insider here. Drew, got Hunter with me. Everybody, how we feeling about the Phils? Let us know in the comments. It's been a heck of a start to May for them. They're red hot. So, I mean, it's been fun to watch. 7 of 8 to start the month, like the title says. And the one game they lost, they didn't lose it in in enormously bad fashion. So you just gotta take it, and they're kind of due for one. So, but outside of that, big things to talk about would be obviously since last time we talked, Trey's injury. That's not ideal. It's going to be a tough 6 weeks without him here. We already got through, I think, one of the weeks, but it's not good to miss Trey Turner. You miss that guy in the lineup whenever he's not in there, and he was playing incredible to start this year. So it's kind of a massive loss.
Absolutely. It's really unfortunate, after the year he has last year where he struggled through the majority of the season, then obviously had a couple good months to finish up a really good postseason, I would say. And then, he starts out this year the way we're all saying, like, we were all saying he's got to start hot. Like, you just can't come out of the gate slow again like last year. And he does exactly that. And even carries the stolen base streak into the start of the year too. And unfortunately, just as a really weird play where he goes from second to home, makes an incredible play, and he gets hurt on it, of course. So really unfortunate for that to be the way he goes down. Really sucks. But I actually I'm not like, if we were in the same spot we were last year where we were about 5 to 6 games under 500 for a lot of the start of the season, and then this happens, it's like, well, nail in the coffin. Like, I don't know if you remember the year we made the World Series against the Astros, Segura went out, and I was like, that's it. Like, there's no way that they're going to be able to survive this now. And somehow they did. So now it's the complete opposite to where I'm like, well, they're going to need a little more from Castellanos, obviously, during this stretch, which I think they've gotten over the past week. Again, we're not playing a lot of good baseball teams. I'm not sure how sustainable Castellanos' success is once we get to some more competitive games. And obviously, everything's building towards October, so I don't know what that looks like there. But for right now, Castellanos has been fine, especially the last week or so. He's done a little bit more. So still a lot of strikeouts. Castellanos just is who he is. Like, I'm not expecting anything major from him. But what we got from him the past week, the first week without Trey, I'm going to take that from him. And then Harper getting hot obviously solves a lot of problems too, which we all knew he was going to get hot at some point. It was only a matter of time. But actually seeing it happen now, everyone was saying, wow, they're playing this well and Harper's not even hot yet. Well, now he's hot. Now you see what's happening. Yesterday was the only one. And I think on that note too, Drew, we can talk about how hot the offense is, but I love how upset they were about yesterday's game because Harper throws his bat. In the locker room, it just seemed like they were very dissatisfied. Like, they didn't care that they had won the past 7 or whatever it was. They were upset that they lost that game. And I think that says a lot about where their heads are at going into this year. Like, they didn't want to start slow. The first week was really the only week they started a little bit slow. And then they pick it up from there, and they're just kind of in – it feels like they have a different mentality in the locker room right now. Like, all right, it's business now. Like, we're going to have fun, but it's also all business as well.
Yeah, it's been really nice because, like you said, last year we were kind of playing from behind the 8 ball to start the year, and it's no fun to do that because you kind of lose hope in the division early on in the season because the Braves are so good the Braves are so good in the regular season, and luckily they're kind of scuffling a little bit here the last few weeks, and it kind of allowed us to hurdle them and get in the first place. I believe we're still 3 games ahead. I haven't checked, but it's huge to be out ahead of them and be playing as well as they are, especially because the pitching has been so good. And the pitching is sustainable. It's not like Ranger's going to win the Cy Young or anything, but he's been very, very good, and he's been the best pitcher on the staff to start the season, other than maybe Zach Wheeler. You could probably argue it, but they've both been aces.
Right, and he's one of the guys in the running for the Cy Young. We have 3 of them, in Nola, Suarez, and Wheeler. I don't think Nola really has any real chance to win it just because that's just not really the pitcher he is now. Like, he's not going to go out there and pitch to a 2 ERA every year, I don't think, but he could certainly end up near that. I don't think like what he'll do will be enough. Like, it's not going to be like his Cy Young candidacy season he had, I think it was 2018. He's probably not going to do something like that again. He doesn't need to either. So I'm not really taking a jab at him, but point being, like, obviously it's not going to last, but the fact that we have 3 guys in the running for it already, that's really encouraging to where where we're at this point in the year and to come out of the gate this hot. And again, like you said, you could really debate on Wheeler because Wheeler has been outside of the Jack Schwinski Grand Slam game. He's been pretty lights out. And I want to say on Suarez too, like it's nice to have an actually deserving pitcher go 6-0 to start the season and have pitcher wins to their name. Like, yeah, that's a guy who deserves like, if you want to bring up pitcher wins, that's one that it's deserving. He has a 1.72 ERA to start this year, and he's been absolutely nasty. So, and again, we've talked about all the reasons why he's been good this year too.
Yeah, and he starts tomorrow, correct?
Yep. Yeah, he'll pitch against the Marlins against Rogers. So,
yeah, I mean that should be a beatdown. There's no way the Marlins. They should sweep the Marlins. I mean, for sure. Yeah, there's no excuses. The Marlins are a bad team.
Right. But we'll see, though. I mean, there's always some demons that pop up in Lone Depot Park. So
true. Hopefully, those demons are us and not the Marlins.
Yeah, right.
But,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to gauge your concern with like Sir Anthony Dominguez and / the Junior Marte injury. I mean, it's kind of like all one at this point. But I mean, I just wanted to kind of see what you were thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned on the right side of the mound right now. Marte, while maybe not a high leverage guy down the stretch of the season, he was pitching very well, and he was taking down some of those high leverage spots here and there. And he's looked better to start this year too. I think he has definitively had better stuff on the mound, specifically with his slider. I think it's been better too. And I believe he added I think it's like a splitter or changeup versus lefties as well. But Sir Anthony has not been great this year. I mean, look, he's had a couple more encouraging outings lately, but I just don't know. I don't know that I trust him. I don't know that he really it's necessarily like him honing it in. Because we've seen him have like a good outing here and there. And then the past year and a half, honestly, and then things just kind of take a downward spiral. And even in the playoffs last year, like he got the job done, but it felt like he kind of got a couple of gifts here and there. It just didn't feel like he had it in the playoffs. It didn't feel like he had a good command of his pitches, especially a slider. And that's felt like the case for a good bit now. I believe we talked about that on last pod. But you look at this pen right now, and, Kirk Ring's kind of still working back from injury. He's going to have some bumps in the road, and he's also just so young. It's just a lot to put on him to rely on him as like the second guy from the right side behind Hoffman, because Hoffman's the guy from the right side right now. Like, I don't think that's really up for debate unless you get like a definitive closer, which they may not. I'm not really going to be upset either way because I think Hoffman's really, really good. And I don't think it's really appreciated enough sometimes just how good he is. I mean, again, all of his pitches are some of the nastiest of those kinds among relievers. So, yeah, I think they definitely need some depth from the right side, and they could probably use like a true number 2 right-handed option. From the left side, I feel pretty good with Alvarado and Strom. I mean, those two guys are obviously dogs. Alvarado is going to take down the 9th inning like the majority of the time right now if it's a close game. And Strom's your guy. You can use him in so many different scenarios, and that's really beneficial. But from the right side, to answer your question, yeah, I am concerned, and I do think they need a guy there for sure. I don't think it's going to be Mason Miller. I mean, I would love if it was Mason Miller, but that's going to cost a fortune because I think that guy's still pre-arb, if I'm not mistaken. And so you're getting like years of control for a guy who's been one of the best relievers of baseball this year. That's just not feasible. But they could certainly go out and get another. Like, there's other names. Obviously, I know Kopech has been the one that's been thrown around. He feels like the most realistic. I mean, Helsley would probably be the top of my list of like realistic options, but I think Kopech would probably be a little more realistic than him. Especially, I mean, the White Sox, they're 100% going to sell. That's not even like the Cardinals are going to drag it out a little bit. The White Sox will not. And they know they're going to sell this year. And clearly the Marlins, speaking of tomorrow, the Marlins clearly do as well. We didn't even talk. Arias got traded since the last time we talked. Like, I was not expecting that to happen so soon, but he's on the Padres now. And that's certainly
thank goodness.
Yeah, right. That's also nice. We don't have to face him tomorrow either. But I kind of went on a tangent there. I got sidetracked a little bit, but I would like a right-handed guy at the deadline right now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's kind of their only need right now. I mean, they have every other spot on the roster filled with competent players. So, I mean, it definitely seems like that's their gaping hole right now. I mean, it's not a terrible problem to have. I mean, it's like every team needs bullpen help. So it's like they're not alone in that. And there's going to be a lot of teams looking for bullpen help come the trade deadline. Like Michael Kopech's going to be very popular. So is Helsley. So it's gonna be like a bidding war. I'm assuming for the best right-handed relievers. So it's
Yeah,
gonna be
and if the Astros don't get it together, I mean, there's a couple guys there that could be really, really exciting.
yeah
I was I was kind of hoping maybe the Padres would falter off and Robert Suarez would be available, but he's been unbelievable this year. So his value definitely went up, and they're also 20-20 in the third wild card spot right now. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, even the Cardinals, they're 15-21 right now. Like I don't see that ship getting righted this year.
yeah
So I would say Helsley is probably a realistic option. But I'm curious in your thoughts on this. Glassen's been unbelievable this year, but he did just have the arm injury. I haven't kept up with what's happened since then. I don't know if you have anything on that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I would personally prefer they continue to develop him as a starter down there. I don't think it would be a bad thing to get him up here and be a pen piece, but and maybe it would help him with just managing his innings and all that. I just think it's tough. Like a Kirkering was a really rare case, so I don't know if
yeah
you can count on Klassen to be called up and do the same thing. I think that's a lot to put on someone who's still kind of developing right now in the low minors.
yeah. I don't think it's a very good idea, just because, like you said, it's kind of gonna like stunt his development a little bit as a starting pitcher, and I think the Phillies want to see what they have in him in a starting pitcher,
Yeah.
and there's no reason for them to kind of interrupt that and be selfish about it and bring him up to be in the bullpen in the major leagues. I mean, it's just obviously he has the stuff to do it, but they have other pitchers in the system that they can bring up to do that if they want to do that. I mean, Griff McGarry's in the bullpen. I don't know how that's going for him, but I mean, he has the stuff to be in the major leagues. So if he can pull it together a little bit, he's definitely a right-handed option.
100%. Yeah. And I think like we talked about it too. I know you're pretty high on Mercado, and I mean I like Mercado too. He's been unbelievable to start this year. I think out of like some of the minor league guys, especially lower minors, he would probably be the guy who would get the call up if anyone, because I think he's kind of viewed. I don't want to say he's viewed as an opener, but that's kind of how I've viewed it so far because they're still stretching him out. So I think it'd be more likely if someone like him could get called up to fill one of those roles. And I actually didn't watch Jose Ruiz this past week. I know he just got called up too. He was someone who I wanted to make the roster start the year. So I'll have to go to film room and see what he looked like in his first couple outings. I saw he didn't give up any runs, so that's good. But obviously, hopefully it's not like Taiwan where I feel like there's mistake pitches that could have cost us runs. We'll talk about that too. But there's some interesting stuff going on with the fifth rotation spot right now. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't really think Klassen would be a great idea there.
Yeah, and kind of like to bounce off of what we were just talking about a little bit. Nerio kind of asked about it. He's worried about the durability of the pitching staff. I mean, as far as the starters go, I mean, I don't worry about any of those guys because the Phillies' starting pitching health has been quite literally ridiculous the last couple of years. I mean, they're not losing guys to injury, other than Ranger had a tough year last year as far as injuries go, but it was nothing major and nothing concerning. But the only guy in the bullpen that I really would worry about is Alvarado because he's had the elbow injuries the last couple of years, and I mean, it's tough to say, but I mean, you can't predict injuries, obviously, and the Phillies might be due for one. It's just the way baseball works.
And his velo has definitely been down this year. Like he's still throwing hard, but
Yeah,
that is a concern, and that's even more reason I think they probably will need a pen piece at the deadline.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not. That is a very unideal situation to say the very least. Because obviously Alvarado at 99 is a lot different than Alvarado at 97. So
yeah. I mean, he's nasty still, but it's definitely not been quite as crisp from him to start this year. I'm not sure what's going on with the velo, but I mean, hopefully it ticks up here come the next few weeks into the rest of the season.
yeah, absolutely. And as far as the durability of the pitching staff goes, I think I'm really only concerned about like the 4 or 5 spot right now because you talked about it, Drew. I mean, Turnbull obviously coming off the years of injuries. What's kind of a good innings cap for him this year or like innings limit for him to kind of reach. I'm not saying they're going to just shut him down at some point, but what's kind of a threshold that he hits and you think maybe it's going to be a little too much for him to handle. I don't know. They probably have a decent idea of that. And obviously with Taiwan, he's coming off of injury. His arm still kind of looks cooked to an extent. He's gotten up to 92. So that'll play better than 89, 90. But still doesn't. I mean, again, Taiwan's fine. Like we've seen from him in the first 2 starts, like I'll admit it. I'm nitpicky because I'm not a huge fan. So I think there's been some meatballs that could have been hit, but that's going to happen with your fifth starter. And for most of that first start, he was numbers-wise fine. His second start, numbers-wise fine. I think his second start was, as far as how he actually looked and how his stuff played, I think his second start was better than his first. I still don't trust him long-term, but, is he going to have another injury pop up too? And then obviously Sanchez he's still kind of getting stretched out as a full-time starter now. So how much can he handle as the year goes on? But that's your 4 and 5 spots, right? And you have 3 guys who can give you really good production at that spot right now. And also they've kind of been flipping guys around as of the past week. I don't really know how to explain what their plan has been. They've had one guy in the bullpen one night, one guy in the bullpen the other, and now it seems like they're kind of settling, I guess, on Turnbull in the pen, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just I think it would be nice for those guys to know their roles. So that's something to watch moving forward. But again, I mean, those are 3 guys competing for one playoff start at the most. That's if you make the NLCS. So, or I guess it depends on how the days. Since we'll go back to Fox this year for the NL playoffs, so they might actually need the 4th guy in the NLDS as well. But point being, I mean, you have 3 other guys in front of them who could very well win the first 3 games in the NLDS, and it wouldn't even be a problem just because of the way they pitch. And in the NLCS, you could very well get out to a 2-1, 3-0 lead because of those guys. So I don't really worry about that as much just because of the way those guys are pitching right now, and they're so dominant. Like, I can't think of another rotation that has a top 3 like that's pitching like this right now. I mean, for whatever reason, I don't know what got into the Red Sox staff this year. They've been pretty incredible. Cutter Crawford's been on a tear, but there's not too many rotations that are as solidified as ours at the top. So that's why I don't really have concern there.
Yeah, and this kind of leads into this other comment that we got, so I'll just kind of throw it up there. Who's the Phillies' best pitcher? I mean, I don't really think it's a question at this point. Zach Wheeler is just unbelievable. I mean, he's probably the best pitcher in baseball with Garrett Cole on the shelf. I mean, he's the ace of aces. I mean, he's going to give you an insane outing pretty much every single time. Seems like he strikes out 10 hitters almost every night or pretty near it. So that's obviously going to be the obvious pick.
Yeah, I don't have any disagreements. And to Nate's comment here too, welcome in, Nate. The power rankings, I mean, he's right at the top, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And again, an ace of all aces. I think he wants a Cy Young too. Like, I think he mostly cares about winning a championship, but I think he does want to add that to his resume. And Jared Jones, speaking of that, man, he has been awesome to start this year. Very fun to watch. But
I mean, there's been a lot of starting pitchers that have really came on the scene this year and are really succeeding. So it's an exciting time.
It is, yeah. Simeon Woods Richardson, I believe, has been pretty good too. There's been a lot of weird names bouncing around there this year and names you haven't heard of until now. And then Paul Skeens is coming up on Saturday to pitch that game. So that should be a treat to watch that. But pitching has definitely been good. It sucks. The other side of that is they're all getting hurt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's been pretty brutal. I mean, a lot of these guys are probably in the major leagues because of an injury to somebody.
Right.
Woods Richardson, he plays for Cleveland, right?
I want to say
Twins.
Toronto or Twins. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep track of these guys for fantasy, Drew. We don't actually keep track of their teams, but
right.
we know who they play for in our leagues. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, the Guardians, they've been playing good baseball too. I don't know if it's the starting pitching or what, but definitely crazy.
Stephen Kwan, that's who it is.
Oh yeah, he got hurt.
That's right. Yeah, they're still playing well without him, but now the Cleveland's exciting too. They always have spurts of success. They never stay down for too long. And they always find their way back to the playoffs. It's just, it feels like they never get further than the ALDS, which is unfortunate. But
they play in a terrible division, so they kind of have a free path to the playoffs every year.
Yeah, they kind of get 20-something free wins, or I don't know how many it is now versus the White Sox, but yeah. I mean, that's a pretty lucky draw to have, and then you look at the other teams in that division. Actually, it is a little better this year, though. I mean, Royals are playing better. Tigers are.
They're an exciting team. The Royals are exciting.
They are.
Bobby Witt is a bona fide superstar. So
Cole Reagans is at a really good year too. Started off very hot, but I don't know, man. I mean, the rotation looks really good. I really have no complaints about them right now. And like Chris said with Klassen, that is good to note. Injury is not serious, which it's good that he was pointing at his upper arm and not the UCL area, because oh my gosh, I think we all would have lost our minds if that happened again. But also the other thing with Klassen is too, Abel hasn't necessarily pitched all that well this year, and Painter's out right now. And you don't have a lot of like top end pitching talent, and obviously McGarry's in the bullpen trying to work through some stuff. Chris also noted that he's had good numbers to start this year. Still a lot of walks. Still needs to cut down in that area. Obviously, automatic strike zone down there makes it a little bit more challenging. But as far as Klassen goes, like you really do want to take your time and hone everything before he's kind of ready to move up to the upper minors. Because once he gets to Double A, it's kind of like, all right, let's really see what we can do now. And then Triple A's, that's pretty much step into the major leagues in a sense. I mean, obviously, major leagues is much more challenging, but it's just kind of like another step along the way rather than it is like, oh, well, now he's going to AAA. Let's see how he can do. Like I feel like that's kind of changed over the past however many years. But point being, it's more confirmation than anything. I think I was talking to you about that with certain guys. But yeah, with the pitching prospects right now, I think it's really, really important to really take care of Klassen and not rush him in his development. Because I mean, look, Pipeline, they're not always the most reliable for the rankings, but he should jump in like mid-season rankings. He should jump probably to, I would think he was going to jump to like top 10 with how he's pitching right now. But
yeah, no question. Yeah, and like I think they kind of learned their lesson with Painter, like rushing him along. And I mean, they kind of tried to take care of Painter a little bit, but it's hard because these guys are so young and like their arms, they're not fully developed yet, so it's kind of a tricky situation. But I think they're going to try to do the right thing and keep them down there and develop them completely.
Right. Yeah. I don't really have too much else on the pitching front, to be quite honest. I mean, I think we've talked about everything, unless you got anything else you wanted to touch on there. Concerns, positives, negatives, anything you got there.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah. I mean, Gregory Soto continues to be an up and down guy. I mean, that's not really like a new development, but he's kind of the only guy we didn't really mention his name, I think. Yeah, I mean, he just kind of is what he is at this point. He's not going to be a reliable, high leverage guy in the playoffs, I don't think, not at this rate. But maybe, I don't know, maybe he has one of those Alvarado type of turnarounds. And I think that's kind of like the only hope at this point for him. Like he's not unreliable completely. There are spots for him, but they're limited. So,
and we kind of hit on some pitching prospects there, but kind of want to talk about a hitting prospect that's been pretty exciting. I think you probably know where I'm going with this. Aiden Miller, man, that kid is so good. I mean, I saw he got hit on the leg with a pitch tonight, but I think he stayed in the game and ended up hitting like 105-mile-an-hour single or something like that. It's crazy what that guy's doing.
I think Winkleman tweeted out that he had like one that looked like it was off the end of the bat or something like that. I think it was a triple down the right field line, if I'm not mistaken. I might be speaking out of turn here. And it's still like 100, 500, something. Like it was something ridiculous that showed up on the exit below. So yeah, I mean the raw power, the raw like bat to ball skills are obviously there. And not only that, but I mean, it seems like the approach at the plate is very advanced for where he is at right now. And we'll continue to say he's probably going to end up in Reading at some point this season. It just would not be a surprise with how he's swinging the bat. There's not much to say. It's pretty simple with him. He's just red hot, and it's because he's doing things the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's definitely ready to take the next step now, and I think it's probably going to come pretty soon because he's been pretty phenomenal to start this season, and it's going to be kind of exciting to watch him join Justin Crawford at High A. It's going to be a fun watch because Justin Crawford's had a really good start to the season.
He has been, yeah, definitely. Maybe raising his value for a deadline deal, but we'll see what the Phillies think. I don't know if they think it'll be a sell high or if they want to continue to see how Crawford develops along the minors. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, those low minors are very exciting. Like just like they were last year, Clearwater, Jersey Shore, they got a lot of guys down there. And then some of those guys are starting to make their way up to Double A now, which is interesting as well. I haven't really kept up with the higher minors to start this season, but as those guys kind of transition into that, it's going to be really exciting to see which guys sink or swim at that level, because that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. That's really the big transition point. So, obviously you want to take as much time as you can with those guys in the low A era that they're in. You want to take as much time as you can. But I do want to get to this comment here too. Speaking of Mason Miller, Chris has a couple ideas for a Miller trade. I personally don't think this one will get it done. He says, if I'm Dave Dombrowski, I'd offer Crawford /Saltavan. and Rincones Jr. for Miller and see where that gets us. I think that probably gets you nowhere. If I'm being honest, they could get so much more for Mason Miller. And he said he would also consider Abel and Crawford as a last resort. I could see that maybe working, but I think there would be a team that outbid us for that. Like the fact that there's a report out there from Rosenthal today that says, well, they're listening. Yeah, another team is going to probably come with a pretty heavy offer for him, if I had to guess, because that's a guy who's, 25, doing what he's doing?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, I think I saw Matt Winkelman tweeting about it a little bit, but he's kind of like an injury ticking time bomb. It seems like just the the way he throws
Sure.
hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough, but I mean, there's no way to predict injuries, obviously. But guys like that, they more often than not end up with some kind of arm ailment.
Sure. Yeah. The hope there would be like, I feel like a lot of the guys with the arm injuries have been starting pitchers. So
Yeah,
you would hope that maybe that would help, that would work in his favor, that now he's pitching out of the bullpen. But again, you just don't know. I mean, it happens seemingly all the time now, relative to how often it used to happen, because all these guys are throwing that fast and they grow up throwing that fast too. Like, you're not meant, like, the human body is not necessarily like meant to throw a baseball that many times, nor is it meant to throw it that fast at that young of an age too. So,
yeah.
um,
And I would never give up Mick Abel for him. I just don't. I don't think the Phillies would either. I mean, I'm way too high on him. I mean, he's had a little bit of a rough start to the year, but he's such a raw pitcher at this point. I mean, he's got some developing to do a little bit before he comes to the major leagues. So I would never give him up. I mean, Crawford, yeah, definitely, but I mean, he's so far behind where Abel is right now. Abel's probably got a few months and then he's gonna be major league ready.
I wouldn't be opposed to trading Abel. I would just need it to be for someone who I'm like, this is the final piece of the puzzle for a championship this year. Like,
Yeah.
I think Abel's going to need a little more time. I don't know if I've kind of changed my tune on him based on how he started the year. I don't know if we'll see him in the big leagues this year. I'm certainly not ruling it out. And that would help us too. It would help eat some innings as well. And at the very least, as long as he's ready, I'm good with it. But Mason Miller, like you said, there is risk there because he's still 25, and there's obviously the injury concern. Not for any reason, but obviously with guys who throw that hard, it's a concern. So then you give Abel up, and then it's like, oh shoot, Mason Miller just got a UCL injury. We just lost a year and a half of Mason Miller after that.
Yep.
That would really suck. And you can't think about that type of stuff too much. But it is a concern. And again, it would need to be for someone who I'm like, this is like the only thing we need. This is not the only thing, but like, this is like the thing that's going to push us over the top. I would have to, like, if I was the front office, I'd have to have a pretty strong inclination towards that.
Yeah. And I don't feel like one reliever is the missing piece.
No, not right now.
You're going to have to add, like, I mean, if we get to the trade deadline and we still have a fully healthy bullpen and you can maybe like move one guy down like Marte or something and you can add a Mason Miller, that's obviously a huge add, but I don't think one reliever is going to win or lose you a championship.
No. And you could, even if you did need that final piece, again, you could get someone similar to Mason Miller who, again, we talked about Helsley and Kopech a ton already on the past two podcasts, but those two guys are both heading into free agency soon. That's not going to be as hefty of a price. It'll be a price for sure. And this is a year where I'm willing to pay a higher price, but you could get one of those guys who's a little more established and you're like, oh, well, I've seen Kopech, maybe not. He just moved to the bullpen, so maybe not as much, but it's like, oh, well, we've seen this in the big leagues before, right? Like we've seen success from both these guys. I'm not saying Miss Miller's not going to continue with success. I mean, that guy's ridiculous. There's a reason I picked him up in both my fantasy leagues, speaking of fantasy, but like a guy like Helsley, it's like we've seen him do it multiple years now, and we know what he's capable of. He started off the year hot. And again, going into free agency, possibly the Cardinals are probably going to be sellers. Like it's something like that where it's like everything lines up and he could be the final piece. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, we're all in, we're pushing all the chips in just to get Ryan Helsley, right? And you're not really going to do that for a relief pitcher either. I think they need to add one, but like you said, the bullpen is talented. Some things will sort themselves out, I think, as the year goes on. And the lineup is so good, the pitching staff, like the rotation is so good that they should probably be fine, regardless of who they add or not. It's just that could really give whoever they add is just honestly an extra edge, like a huge extra edge they could have over any team to where it's like, oh, well, we're in the situation where we had last year. Kimbrel was in that spot. Oh, yeah, we're putting Michael Kopech or Ryan Helsley in that spot. Good luck. Go hit him. Like, it's just
Yeah.
not going to happen this year. So it's more of a luxury than anything, but it's also like those spots where we could have won those games that could honestly push us to the World Series too. But
Right.
I don't think it has to be Mason Miller either.
Yeah. I mean, the Phillies, unfortunately, last year, they just didn't have a choice with the whole Kimbrel thing. I think we all know that. But
Yeah.
it's obviously like looking back on it, one reliever might have got us to the World Series and maybe won the World Series. I mean, the Diamondbacks went into that series and they were totally overmatched. I mean, they just had no chance. But like, it's definitely interesting to look back on and be like, maybe that one guy could have won us that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you also go to like, all right, well, let's say we disregard the bullpen, we keep it as it is, and we go to game 6 and 7. And in game 7, you have someone other than Castellanos, like someone like Whit Merrifield to pinch hit for Castellanos and just put the ball in play. Or Rojas, like you have someone like Whit Merrifield to put the ball in play. You know, I certainly hope I'm not jinxing Whit Merrifield and manifesting a moment where he's going to come off the pinch hit and then he swings and misses too. That could very well happen. Hopefully I'm not manifesting that right now. I'm not saying he's going to be the end all be all, but it's like you do have that option now if someone is struggling to have Merrifield just get a baseball into the outfield possibly, because he has been able to fly out a little bit. Some of it's been shallow, but I mean, with how Castellanos was going in that series, yeah, I would have trusted Whit Merrifield to possibly get a sacrifice fly in game 7 more than him. So obviously I think the bullpen was more of a like, oh, if you add one more guy, you probably would have won the series. Sure. I think that's more of like a reasonable fix there from that series. There were a number of things we could have done better, but you know, there's also that too. And you could probably use a left-handed bench bat as well at the deadline. We'll see if they try to address that. But yeah, it is crazy, man. Like that is probably where they're at right now, where they're like that one piece away from winning that one situation that pushes them over the top. So
Yeah.
Didn't want to revisit the trauma, but I mean, obviously, yeah, that is something to think about going into this postseason, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you kind of just like made me think differently about maybe one reliever not being the piece. But I mean, that obviously it's such a specific situation where Kimbrel comes in and blows 2 or 3 games in one series. I mean, obviously your back end guys should not be doing that. So I mean, it's definitely nice to not have Craig Kimbrel this year. I can tell you that much.
Yeah,
as far as the end of the, he was great up until like a month ago in the season or so, and he just kind of melted down. I don't know, maybe his body just broke down on him, but I mean, having a guy like that in the postseason, it's just kind of brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to get to some of these comments here before we kind of flip it over to the offense, which we haven't talked about a lot. Obviously, Cody Clemens, carrying the load right now, as we all expected. But
yeah, no doubt.
Jonathan says, I wonder if they told some of their starters, if some of the starters were told to not push velocity. It seems like a few guys are off a few miles per hour.
I mean, I think it's just kind of natural. Like they kind of build up their velocity throughout the year, and like Nola, he's been kind of where he's going to be, and Chris Sanchez.
Conditions impacted that too, like weather conditions.
No doubt. Yeah, he was throwing like 89 in that one rain game, which was great. I mean, he was really good that game. So, I mean, if that's what you need to do to get through that and not give up a ton of runs, go for it. I mean, obviously he has the stuff to do it, so it's just all dependent on the situation, obviously. But I mean, Chris Sanchez, I don't think they told him to hold anything back. He was throwing like 96 in the 7th inning the other day. So, I mean, that's good to see. I mean, if he's going to do what he's doing and be throwing 96 instead of 93, yeah, I mean, I'm all in on that.
Yeah, Sanchez has definitely been a tick up this year, which is,
no doubt.
It's definitely. I was a little worried about it maybe affecting his movement a little bit there. And you could argue maybe it has in some aspects. I haven't actually checked the numbers on his movement, but I think he's still been very much what we thought he could be this year. I'm not really concerned about Chris Sanchez right now at all. I mean, I think he's been very, very good to start this year. Yeah, there's things he could do better, but I'm not really like upset with what Chris Sanchez has given us. I mean, that's what you need out of a fourth starter right now.
Yeah. I mean, he's had a couple bad outings, but I mean,
right.
Other than that, he's been pretty lights out. I mean, he's been very, very, very efficient pretty much every single start, and that's the kind of pitcher he's going to be. I mean, he's going to miss some bats with the changeup and the sinker. I mean, they're both obviously really good pitches, but I mean, he's a ground ball pitcher as far as I'm concerned, and the defense behind him has been kind of lackluster at times this year, and he kind of hurt himself in that one start. So, I mean, that kind of affected his ERA because the scoring has been very, very offensive favored. So, and I don't really look too much at ERA all the time. Like it's nice to see a Ranger with a 1 point whatever ERA, 1.5 or whatever it is. But I mean, it doesn't mean everything.
Right. The only thing I would say about Sanchez is he's already one walk shy of his total walks from last year. So he is working around certain guys a little bit more. But I think part of that might be, other teams also have a scouting report on him now too. Not that they didn't before. Like every team's got scouting reports on guys down to AA. But obviously Chris Sanchez has changed as the years have gone on. So that scouting report, the book on him, I guess, has changed as well. And he's probably also adjusting as well as he goes into this year and probably trying to keep guys off balance. And, I want to say he's used the slider to get a few, like it's been a little more effective this year. Again, I haven't checked the numbers on that, but yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about him at all. But I also do want to get to this too. We kind of talked about Abel a little bit, just to wrap up on him. I want to get your thoughts on Chris's comment here. He says his start to the year has dampened his confidence in his upside, and he asks, what do we think he can achieve? 3 to 4 level starter, mid threes for ERA.
I mean, he, like I said a little bit ago, he's kind of not done developing completely yet. And like you said, his timetable's kind of been pushed back a little bit. But I mean, I feel like his potential is like top of the rotation starter, like 1 or 2. I mean, it's no doubt he has the stuff to do it. But I mean, his command has been very erratic at times. And that's basically, that separates the really good pitchers from the good pitchers, like the middle of the pack guys. And if he can figure out the command and do it on a consistent basis, I mean, he's got every bit of the potential to be a front end of the rotation guy. But his floor is obviously going to be probably a number 4, I would say, just based on the stuff. He's not going to be a number 5 unless something would happen and he would tick way down in velocity. So, I mean, I still feel good about him, but I think I might be higher than most.
Yeah, my ceiling on him is a number 2. I think Chris could be right. I mean, I think he could probably end up being a 3 or a 4 with how it looks right now. But again, I don't want to overreact too much just because we're 1 month into the season. And again, these prospects, they can fluctuate quite a bit. And I know Mick Abel, he hasn't followed the same timeline as Andrew Painter, and that's just going to lead to probably some more overreactions just as a result. But that doesn't mean he's not going to develop, just because, again, Painter's he's one of those Paul Skeens types of cases.
Right.
And Skeens went to LSU. Painter did it out of high school. Keep that in mind.
Painter's 21, I think. So
right.
Or
he was
22.
ready to join. He was ready to join the rotation. Painter was at 19 years old last year.
It's crazy.
That doesn't happen very often. And again, I get it. Like Mick Abel was drafted a year before him. So, there's going to be a little more urgency from the fan base to see him develop or to want to see him develop. But again, I mean, he was drafted out of high school. The guy is still figuring things out. You just got to give it some time. And I'm just not ready to jump completely out on him. I think from what we've seen, I'm willing to say his floor is lower for sure than I originally thought it was. I could see him maybe not really working his way into the rotation in a year or 2. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying I see a path where that does happen. I'm not really super overly worried about Abel right now. So
yeah, you can't read too much into 3 or 4 starts, which I think he's kind of been shut down a little bit here the last week because I haven't seen anything on him. But I mean, sorry. I mean, I kind of it's not that I hate when something like this happens, but I hate whenever a guy is so good like Andrew Painter was, because it skews everybody's expectations for these guys coming out of high school. I mean, Abel's only 22 or 23 years old. I mean, he's younger than almost every starting pitcher in baseball. You just got to you got to give him some time. I mean, you can't raise your expectations to the point where you think he's going to come out of the minors and be like Zach Wheeler.
Right. And George Klassen's also 22, and he's in the low minors. He's pitching very well, but he could very well get up to AA and hit a wall. That's just what happens. You have guys who are trying to work their way back to the big leagues up there. You have guys who are trying to get up to the big leagues for the first time. It's just night and day between AA, AAA versus low A, high A. It's a big transition. And Abel handled AA better last year as the year went on, I think, and he had bright spots for sure. Probably not as well as people had hoped. And I think a lot of people have jumped out on him since then. But again, there's still there's a reason he's in AAA right now too. And that tells you, like you said, he's probably not very far away. They don't think he's far away. It's just there might be some things he's got to continue to work on to get back up to where we know he can be to get that promotion. So anyway, I do want to turn it to the offense to kind of close out here. There's not a lot to say about the offense other than they've been red hot. Bryce Harper's finally got going. He's had a couple home runs over the past week. And yeah, I don't know what's gotten into Cody Clemens, man. I mean, last year, he comes up and he just rakes. And again, I don't think he's like a long-term bench piece. I think there's a reason he's probably going to be sent back down once Trey gets healthy. I don't know. Maybe he is the left-handed bench bat. I don't see it long-term, but you need those types of guys throughout the regular season. Like to have him as the 27th man, that's a really good guy to have as infield depth because, again, if he can come up, he's pretty much – I made the comparison, not similar swings or play styles or anything like that, but it's like when Maton will come up and he would just kind of provide a spark to the team. And not that this team needed a spark right now, but he's done some things since he's gotten up here. Like I think I want to say he has like 3 or 4 bombs already. He's doing a lot of things like the correct way. And again, I don't think he's a guy as he sees Major League pitching over the year that is going to continue to have that same success rate. But you need your Drew Ellises who have just one game that elevates you. Like you need those types of guys. And a lot of people aren't going to remember it. Like this isn't really a good example. Like they signed Bradley Zimmer in 2022 when they had some center field problems. He played like 8 games, but they needed someone to stand out there. And obviously Cody Clemens has done a lot more than Drew Ellis and Bradley Zimmer in his short time. So he's been playing well. I just wanted to highlight him. And yeah, we talked about Castellanos. We talked about Harper at the start. Realmuto's been a little hotter as of late too. Like Bryson Stott seems like he's starting to figure it out too. It's just good to see the guys who have been struggling a little bit. Seems like they're the ones who are starting to carry the load as of the last week. Marsh has cooled off since the start of the season, which again, he's just kind of a guy. He's going to have his ebbs and flows throughout the year. I'm not concerned about him, but overall, I'm pleased that the guys who kind of had their little, I don't want to say slump completely, but they had a little bit of a dry spell the last couple weeks of April there, and it seems like they've been better as of late.
Yeah, and kind of like to touch on the Cody Clemens thing. I mean, it takes all of like 40 guys to make it to the postseason, and I mean, Cody Clemens is one of the best out of those last 14 guys that aren't on the 40-man roster or on the 26-man roster consistently. And I mean, like you said, he's a great 27th man because he provides that spark sometimes, and he's obviously a great clubhouse guy. So it's definitely nice to see him having success. But I mean, like you said, I mean, it's been really fun to watch this offense. I mean, they've been so good, and I mean, it's kind of interesting to see like whenever one guy gets down, another guy gets hot, and then kind of vice versa. Like they just kind of bounce off each other. It's really nice to see. I mean, like the last couple of days, feels like the top of the lineup outside of Bryce hasn't done a ton. I mean, it's like whenever the top's not doing good, the bottom's doing good. It's super fun.
Feels very complimentary. Like it's kind of like in football, how you have, all right, defense isn't playing well this game, offense pick them up and you go win a shootout. Or offense is playing well, defense go pick them up and go win a nail biter, right? And I think that's the lineup right now. It's been very complimentary, like you said. From the top of the order to the bottom of the order. And as far as Trey goes too, I mean, yeah, Merrifield has had his ups and downs, but I think he has been definitively better over the past couple of weeks.
No doubt.
He's a piece of the puzzle too, as I talked about earlier. And they need him to not be Josh Harrison. I don't think he's going to be that, but it was looking like that for his first like 13 at-bats or so of the year.
Yeah.
But having him, that gives you the option to where if Ranger or Sanchez or someone who's more of a ground ball pitcher is on the mound, I probably want Sosa out at shortstop because he's a really good defensive shortstop. Can't play third base for whatever the reason, like he did his first year with us, but he's a really good shortstop. And I'd prefer him over Stott. I think a lot of people think, oh, we'll just move Stott to short and turn it to second. We've heard that so many times. I don't think we really need to address it at this point. Stott is an elite second baseman for a reason. And there are limitations on his defensive game that make him a really good second baseman. But you do have the option with Stott to where he can play short and Merrifield can play second if you need a little more offense and Merrifield is swinging a hot bat. So it's nice. You have those options there to pick you up while Trey is out. They're not going to replace Trey. That's where the bottom of the order comes in. That's where Castellanos comes in too, and just Harper doing what he's doing. But yeah, that's been encouraging to me as well, seeing those guys like Sosa, I think has had some nice at-bats too. I think Ben Silver tweeted out, it was a funny stat. Like his walk rate's really low. I don't know if you saw this one. Sosa's walk rate is really low, but he also has like a 4.2 hit by pitch rate over the past couple of years, which is like a pretty
That's
high hit by
crazy.
pitch. But I don't know. Maybe he's grabbing the plate well.
Yeah,
Really weird stat. Like he gets, I think he gets hit more than gets hit by pitch more than he walks. So
that's
uh,
crazy.
I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's good
that's
to see those guys picking up Trey while he's out right now.
yeah. And like you said, I mean, I think it depends on who's pitching, but I mean, right now I want to see Witt playing second base and stop
Yep.
playing short just because of the offense. I mean, Witt's been pretty phenomenal lately. I mean, he had a little bit of a tough game the other day. I think he had one hit, but when he was batting second, I mean, but it's nice that you have a guy like Witt that can step in and bat second if you need him to, because he's a veteran. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's batted at the top of lineups. He's batted in the middle of lineups. He's batted at the bottom. I mean, it's definitely good to have a guy that's had the experience doing pretty much everything on the baseball field.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I was a little frustrated, as if you were in our Discord, you saw I was pretty upset when he went down swinging with the bases loaded in that inning. I was very, and then Harper hits the grand slam and makes us forget about it. But like that's the type of thing that I'm like, I could see this coming back to bite us in the playoffs if Witt does this. So that's why I was so upset. But overall, I've been fine with what Witt has done as of late, and I do want to talk about Rojas, kind of our weekly Rojas check-in, I guess you could call it. We always talk about, like, we can't go a pod without talking about him, obviously. Has cooled off a little bit. He kind of got hot in the middle there. Any concerns there, Drew, with him maybe not being able to play at a high enough level? I'm honestly kind of at the point with him where I'm like, this is just going to happen with a young guy. I mean, he's just going to have his ups and I've said this a lot, this podcast, but I think it's especially true for Rojas. Like, he's just going to be hot and cold. He's a young player. He hasn't been, I think it's been masked by the offense lately. Like, it hasn't been to a point where I've been like, oh man, we can't have this guy in the lineup. But I think that's also the point. If the offense does what they're supposed to do, you're not even going to think about Rojas. Not that you're not going to think about it. Maybe that's not a good way to put it. But like, you're not going to think about it nearly as much as you would if the rest of the offense isn't doing their job. So, yeah, to that end, like, it's Rojas is only a problem if 1 through 8 are a problem.
Yeah, definitely.
We've talked about that so many times. So that's kind of where I've landed on it at this point. But any concerns there right now?
No, I mean, the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is it seems like when he's struggling offensively, it's kind of leaking into the field and he's not doing Rojas things. Like the other day, I think he had 2 balls in one game where you're like, why is he not catching that? Like, it's strange because, I mean, they were both like very hard catches, but they are catches that you expect him to make, and he has made in the past. So, I mean, he needs to kind of reel it back in a little bit as far as the defense goes because he hasn't been what he was last year. And obviously, nothing has changed. I mean, he's still an elite center fielder. It's just things aren't really going his way right now, and the offense is probably a part of that.
It's a great point. I didn't even think about the offense kind of leaking into the defense, as you said.
We saw it with Alec Boehm a couple years ago. I mean, when you struggle offensively, your defense is bad, and when you struggle defensively, your offense is bad. It's all one.
Especially with Boehm, he wears his heart on his sleeve. I mean, he's an emotional player. But it's something you maybe don't expect as much with a guy like Rojas, who just seems to take so much pride in his defense. And like you said, a couple of baseballs that should have been caught. At least one of them definitely should have been caught out there, and you expect him to make that play. But yeah, it's just going to be part of the Rojas
experience.
The experience. That's a good word for it. But it's just, you're just going to have to deal with it. And if you think it's seriously an issue, like, you can address that at the deadline if need be. But I would hope it doesn't get to that point, especially having the insurance of a Whit Merrifield at bat in a playoff moment. I would hope that that's something that you can fall back on and say, all right, we don't need to spend assets on an outfielder when we could focus our assets on another addition to the team that could really help us. So that's kind of most. I mean, I don't have too much to add on the offense, honestly, Drew. I mean, I'll say this: Stubbs has had a couple hits to start this year, so that's more than he usually does. He's actually done some stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's anything to take note of, but for him, like, I'm totally fine with his offensive performance so far.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest jobs in sports, quite frankly. Being a backup catcher to a guy like JT. I mean, JT plays 6 games in a row, and then you play 1. I mean, it's almost impossible. Like, it's so hard to be a backup catcher like that. But I kind of wanted to gauge your opinion on this, like the Boehm injury. it seems like it's bothering him. I mean, I don't really know, but it seems like after that happened, his offense has kind of cooled down a little bit. So
Sure.
just kind of wanted to see how you felt about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was scorching hot before that happened. So I think it's
Yeah.
reasonable to think even if he feels fine right now, it's something where it's like maybe that affected a few of his at bats, and now he's kind of trying to build back his rhythm a little bit. But I do just want to say before we talk about that a little bit, he's been incredible start this year.
Man, yeah.
He is wow. I think he heard the talk that we don't need to give Bowman an extension. Ada Miller's coming up soon. I think he heard that, and maybe he took it personally. And if he did, that's a great thing. You can figure out the puzzle pieces when they get here, right? Like,
Yep.
that is ideal scenario. Like, it's a good problem to have if you get to that point. But for right now, they need Bowman to be a productive part of this offense, and he has certainly been that. I think, like you said, the doubles have been there this year too. Feels like he has had a little bit more power, like not a ton, but again, the doubles is I want to see him go gap to gap. I don't need to
Yep.
see him lift the ball over the fence a ton. I want to say he's on pace for probably 20 home runs right now. Like, he has 4 in 37 games, maybe not 20 on that pace. I'll check that real quick, but I guess it depends on whether you do it by plate appearances or at bats. But point being though, like, I do think that could have stunted his hot streak a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have too much on that end, just because I think the rest of the offense again has been masking some of those types of issues so far. So
Yeah.
I don't have too much to say. And yeah, like Ben said, as long as Stubbs' defense is good, that's really all I care about. Like, as long as his pop time's there, as long as he's able to block a little bit better this year, that's fine with me. But yeah, again, it's also like it's a 405 OPS, yeah, but he's had 22 at bats, right? And
Yeah.
probably just what you're probably he's going to be a 500 OPS guy as a backup catcher. So
Yeah.
just
And if you can find a backup catcher that's going to do better than that, playing once every 7 or 8 games, I mean,
right.
Good luck. I mean, go right ahead, I guess. But it's basically a dead spot in the roster, honestly. It's just the way it is. I mean, he's only going to play if JT gets hurt or if JT needs an off day. So
yeah,
it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think Bohm's on pace for 17 and a half right now. So he'll end up 17 to 18 home runs right now if he is there. But he's probably also on pace for like 1,000 doubles. So that's why I don't really have too much care in the world about the home runs right now.
Yeah, I mean,
if he hits 50 doubles, no one's going to care.
Yeah, you have all these other guys in the lineup that hit home runs. I mean, you need a guy like Alec Bohm, and he's been probably the best cleanup hitter in baseball to start the season. So it's incredible development.
I saw he topped the third baseman power rankings the other day, which I know you were talking about too, Drew. So you were talking about that before the rankings dropped, is what I meant to say. But yeah, it's been exciting.
Yeah, he's no doubt one of the best third basemen in baseball right now. It's kind of crazy to say after the last couple of years he's had, but I mean, he's obviously got the work ethic. I mean, it's not for lack of trying the last couple of years that he struggled a little bit, but I mean, it's kind of incredible to see him put it all together.
I do want to ask you, we've talked about the lineup now. We've talked about the pitching a lot. We've talked about pretty much every single player since the last time we talked, and what kind of stock up, stock down. We don't really talk about Thompson a lot on the pod, and I think that's because we have a lot of faith in him. But I just kind of wanted to gauge where you're at with him this year, like anything you've noticed with him so far. I really don't take too much of what he's done from April and May, because what he's doing in April and May is to get to the later portions of the season. It's not the decision he's going to make in October. But, there have been some questionable decisions. There always are in the regular season. And probably some things he could have done a little better decision-making wise. It's really mostly just the pen decisions. That's the biggest thing. But I just kind of wanted to gauge where you're at with him. I imagine it hasn't changed at all from the start of the season. I don't know. We don't talk about him a lot. So I just wanted to talk about him a little bit.
I mean, if anything, I'm kind of feeling better about him than I did at the beginning of the season, because the team has been playing so well. And I mean, he has such a firm grasp on that clubhouse. It's like, it's kind of special. Like, you don't see it very often. I mean, he's kind of like putting himself up there with the best managers in baseball. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that he never had a managing chance before he had it with the Phillies. It's pretty wild.
Baseball is weird, man. There's not really a linear path to the manager position. You just kind of have, like, I don't want to say you happen to get it, but you're a guy like Rob Thompson, you had to do your time to get there.
No doubt. Yeah. He was ready to retire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't blame him. Like, he was a bench coach for so long. In football, it's, oh, well, you go up, you get the offensive coordinator role, and then you're going to get offered a head coaching job somewhere else. Not that simple in baseball. I mean, you could have Raul Ibanez interviewing and maybe interview better than you, and then you just kind of get knocked down in the interview rankings because a guy who hasn't even managed before but is a former player, he goes and takes an interview from you. So
yeah,
there's just so many different paths to being a manager. Look at Gabe Kapler. That was one of the weirdest paths to being a manager. You just don't know how it could happen, and it really was great timing with Rob. Like, obviously, for him, I'm sure it's not great that his friend in Joe Girardi had to be sacrificed for him to get that role, but for him, it worked out really well to where it was like, well, he was going to retire, and then he lucks into getting a job he probably has wanted for a long time, or I don't know what his baseball desires were for however long, but every coach, I'm sure, dreams of being a manager someday and taking the reins. It's really cool to see what he's done so far as the Phillies manager over the past couple of years. And yeah, I mean, this is the best start they've had since a Charlie Manuel led team. That is nothing to scoff at, man, because it's not just that Rob has helped these teams kind of get over the rough starts of the past couple of years and then get to the postseason. It's what he's doing now that's really impressed me, because you have a lot of talent, but a lot of this is the coaching. It really is. It's the development staff. It's how they manage these guys. And again, even with how well they're playing right now, they are being managed for October. That is going to continue to be the theme of these podcasts. Is everything is about October. It's not about what's going to happen in June and July. That matters to get to October and to be there. But I think the Phillies have like a 90+ chance to get to October now. So it really is just about being in the best shape possible and knowing the best formula to win in October.
Yep.
And I think Thompson did a great job of that.
Yeah. And to kind of like further your point, like he, like whenever a starter doesn't want to have extra days rest or whatever, it kind of seems like he just kind of takes it out of their hands at some point. Like Wheeler, obviously, he despises having extra days off for some reason. But I mean, like, you just got to take it out of his hands at some point and be like, take a seat. Like, I mean, you're so good, and we need you for the rest of the season. I mean, he has such a good feel for that kind of stuff, it feels like. And it's something I think all the players respect about him. And I mean, obviously, everybody loves him. So it's such a good combination.
Right. And running a six-man rotation, even if just for a week or two, that saves you 6 to 7, maybe 12 to 13 innings by the end of the year. And that's 100, 200 pitches possibly. So it does, like, that is a little thing. It goes a long way when it comes to your totals at the end of the season, because again, the fresher they can be come October, that's what I think that's a big part of what happened versus Houston was Wheeler pitched incredible in game 6, but obviously he did not pitch well in game 2. Nola did not pitch well in that series in game 1. Some of those guys just felt like they had dead arm. And, guys like Ranger Suarez, like, he didn't pitch as many innings that year because of injury or whatever it was. And still getting stretched out. So it's like, he still had a little bit left in the tank. But these guys who are being the workhorses, man, like, you need to keep them ready for October. And I think, like you said, he's done a good job of that. And I am totally fine that they did a 6-man for a couple weeks. It wasn't something that I wanted for any longer than that. I think they did it for the right amount of time, and now they can kind of go forward. And if they want to do it for another week or two at some point again this season, that could happen. But I just wanted to touch on Thompson because I think he's done an incredible job with this team. And, he gets some unwarranted hate from a lot of radio callers sometimes, and people overreacting after 2 games to start the year. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. That's in the past now. But anything else you wanted to talk on about the team before we kind of wrap up here? I don't have too much to say. I've been very pleased with what's been going on. The only other thing we didn't mention was Wesley Moore, pitching prospect, who's really kind of burst onto the scene as of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty incredible. It's kind of crazy. Like, a guy comes out of like nowhere. I mean, he's literally coming out of like the middle of nowhere. I mean, he wasn't even ranked on a lot of people's lists, so it's crazy to see. But I mean, he has a nasty arm slot, and he has a nasty changeup. So I guess he could maybe make the majors this year. It's kind of crazy to say, but it's wild. I think we might have lost Hunter there for a second. He'll be back.
Yeah, you're good now. Yeah. Well, it happened at the end of the stream this time, which is weird. Usually happens at the middle point, but
yeah. But yeah, Wesley Moore. It's a good story.
I don't
for
know.
Sure.
I don't really have too much else. Oh, I think I'm back now.
Yep.
We good
Yep.
now?
There you are. You're good. Yep. Nope. He's gone now. He's gone.
Yeah.
But
My internet really bugged out at the end of this, but
yeah.
no, I don't have too much else to say on the team. They've been great lately. Again, it's nice when there's just so much positive to talk about. This just doesn't.
Yeah.
I said this last podcast. It just doesn't happen very often, and feels surreal, man. We are the best team in baseball record wise right now. I didn't
Yeah.
think we'd be sitting here saying this at the start of May. I thought it was going to be 15-23 or something like that, where it's like, man, we're really down in the bottom of the wild card right now. Like we can't even get the third wild card spot. But no, they've come out and they've had a different mentality this year, and I love to see that. Also, love to see that the D-backs are not playing so well right now.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to touch on this earlier, and I kind of got away from it, but I mean, the Padres, like you said, are in the last wild card spot right now, and we just looked like we were 10 times the team they were in that series. I mean, it just tells you how good the Phillies are. It's just,
Right.
It's crazy. Like people just kind of like overestimate or over expect the way the Phillies are playing. I mean, it's like you have to kind of respect what they're doing. I mean, you're not going to get much better than this. I mean, they're on pace to win like 110 games. So
Sure.
it's just, we're so much better than 90% of the league. It's kind of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. And I honestly, with the mentality they have, I don't have too many concerns about them having that bye to start the playoffs.
Right.
We will see. I mean, obviously that is a concern. It has affected some teams, but you also see a team like the Astros, that doesn't faze them. And that's the type of team the Phillies need to be, is just killer mentality when it comes to the playoffs. I don't care that we haven't played. We need to come ready to play that first game and go set the tone for the series. So that's why I don't really have too much worry about this team having a Braves or Dodgers-esque collapse in the NLDS, just because I think they are a different mentality, and I think they are much more well-rounded than those two teams were the past couple of years. Because I think, like you said, if the top of the lineup doesn't play well to start the postseason, I think the bottom of the lineup can pick them up in that spot. And obviously it's going to be better pitching, but I think they can do that. So, like you said, that wild card race is pretty ugly right now for the third spot. It's bad. And I mean, so bad that the Mets are tied for it right now, and they're 18-18. That should tell you everything you need to know about that spot. The Nationals are also tied with the Mets at 18-18. And I would feel much better about the Nationals. I think they're a little more starting to claw out of the rebuild, but they're not there yet. They still have a lot of work to do. And I think they will kind of like taper off at some point. But point being, like Drew said, the Braves really don't have the pitching depth, I think, to keep up with us. The Cubs are interesting. They're one of those teams, like if they get in with a guy like Justin Steele, they could certainly get hot, but we'll see. Still some holes there I think they need to address. And you look at the rest of it. I mean, the Brewers as the other division winner, we play them in the NLCS. No, that doesn't scare me. The Dodgers, they're very good. I think we could take them. None of the teams in the National League scare me. There are teams that I think can compete with us and that could certainly knock us out if we're not ready to go. But I think we have probably the best shot to win the National League right now out of any of those teams.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to say coming from where we were a couple of years ago.
Wouldn't have thought that. Not at all. But that's all I got. Anything you want to say, Drew, before we sign off?
Nope. I think we covered pretty much everything there is to cover. I mean, there's, like you said, there's not a ton to talk about because they're playing so good right now. So hopefully next time there's not a lot to talk about either.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think we're kind of ready for a midsummer to obviously get the trade deadline, and then from the trade deadline, it really is just like kind of smooth downhill from there. It's like, all right, everything matters now. So not that nothing matters right now, but it's all kind of just building towards that. So anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all of you. Again, we'll be on a more consistent, probably weekly live schedule as the month of May progresses. And again, like you said, hopefully not a lot to talk about, but yeah, again, the pod will start to get a little more frequent as we get into June and July. And then it will get much more frequent as we get moving towards the push for the playoffs. So yeah, keep an eye out for stuff. If you guys got video ideas for us, let us know. We'd love to do some shorter videos too. We don't have to just do a live every single time. Just let us know what content you guys want to see in the Discord. Anything you want to say, Drew?
Nope. Everybody have a great night. Enjoy this next week. I mean, Phillies should probably win 4 or 5, at least 5 games this next week. So definitely enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for watching. God bless y'all. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.